All right, there we go.
All right, welcome everyone to Setting Up for Success, Creating Accessible Microsoft Word, Excel, and PowerPoint Documents. Um, Diana Wilson and myself, Anna Edgerton, we're the web support specialists and we'll be presenting today. So Diana's going to kick us off.
Thanks so much for dealing with all our little technical difficulties we've been having getting set up here, but I think we're here now. So this is, thank you very much for tuning in today. This is our course outline. We're going to cover why and how we're doing it being remediating, accessibility tools. We're going to pretty much touch on the accessibility checker, and if we have time, the color contrast tool as well. We're going to have accessibility best practices in Microsoft Office, and then setting up accessible documents and converting to PDF for Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. So I hope that you're um, here for these items. So why we do it? So basically, it's the law, and lawsuits are very expensive. We wish to communicate with with the public. Um, we we all we're all kind of using accessibility features now. I know my eyes are not getting any better as I'm aging, so using my magnifying tools to make text larger and things like that is one um, accessibility tool that's being used. And so that is also, most of us will need assisted technology in some way, and it improves the search engine operation. So, when you have documents up on the web, someone's searching for it. When you have a properly remediated document, it's going to be easier for them to find it because you're going to have your properties set up. And then the accessibility is, about the human experience. It's it's for all people regardless of what kind of challenges you might have, and it's just the right thing to do in general to have remediated documents, ADA compliant documents available to the public. And so how do we do it? So we're going to communicate. um, Basically, we want to have content or instructions that you are typically you're that first person who is making that document, or if you're giving information to someone else to create a document, to that first step is the most important, because the more you can set up that document with ADA in mind, the easier it's going to be for that document to be remediated, to be compliant. And I know that probably at least some of you online have dealt with documents that you've received from maybe a third party, a vendor, um, and it's impossible to remediate. It's just not ADA compliant, and it's really tricky to make it compliant. And so after you're done with the document, you know, the people who come after you who are going to be remediating the document, anything that you can do to make it easier is just going to make it faster and more affordable, because doing the remediation is can be very timely. Um, and then we want to try to establish some workflows and automation, and that would allow us to work smarter and not harder. And you can add remediation processes to project timelines when you create templates and things like that. And then we're obviously training. You're attending this class and hopefully other classes that you can take. You can get educated with these classes and then train others in your department, either those who come before you, to educate them in how to create documents to be compliant, or just coworkers who are maybe struggling. And then review your work, use automated tools, use the read out loud tool, and also use keyboard only, because a lot of times those with who are using assisted technologies may be only using the keyboard, especially if people perhaps um, have mobility issues and things like that. And then keep in mind that for vendors, please enforce the contracts. And there's a link here, and that covers, there's verbiage in our contracts for vendors that particularly point out that our documents that we are receiving should be ADA compliant and should be remediated. And so it's just a matter of enforcing those contracts and keeping the vendors on top of it. So we'll probably, I think, in the future have a class on that because it's something that's, I think, kind of falls through the cracks. So anyway, please keep that in mind. And now here's our accessibility best practices for Microsoft Office in general. So keep in mind, you're going to want to, with your abbreviations and acronyms, it's always best to type out the first text that you have in full, and then within parentheses have your abbreviations in there. So instead of the CAO's office, you want to say County Administrator's Office, parentheses, CAO, and then in the future you can use those. Try not to overuse the acronyms when necessary. Just makes things a little more confusing for someone who might be having cognitive issues or who just isn't able to see. And sometimes the reader will read the word just depending on what kind of reader someone has. If it's, SPAM for whatever your acronym is, it could just read it as spam. And then it's like, what? Okay. So try to avoid that, things like that. And then with fonts, it's best practices to use a sans serif font. We in the county use Calibre, tends to be the standard, and the minimum you want to go towards is 11 points with a line spacing of 1.5. And this is for the web-based documentation. Not This is all kind of web-based versus printed, but we still want to have that spacing in there. It's easier. And then never use all caps. Again, in a screen reader, it could read the all caps as an acronym. So I know a lot of our documentation, especially the legal documentation, it is kind of, we have headers sometimes in all caps, but we'd like to try to move away from that because it just makes the assistive technology a little bit more cumbersome. And then also use bold sparingly. And then use a table of contents when appropriate, especially with larger documents. Now, this particular, oh, go back. That's okay. There we go. This particular slide is talking about the font styles in Word for the all caps. And so here's a way that you can have the appearance of all caps, but in the background, it will read as normal text, with capital, the first, letter of a sentence being capitalized and then the rest in normal case. So you can use this when you need to. This is a way to work around that. Part of the accessibility is to have understandable, it's a large part, is to have understandable documentation. So use plain language. The goal is to have the readability with users to a secondary reading level. And I know that can be difficult, especially if you have legal documentation, or we get a lot of, we see a lot of documents that come through that are for larger projects, and sometimes it's very complex dialogue, but we're trying to make it more user friendly. And so try to write for your audience. You're writing for the whole county, not just the upper echelon tier of people. And then we want to make sure that the language is correct versus English versus Spanish. Um, and so when it's presented as bilingual, it's important to indicate which language is being used in the document, especially if it's other than English. So this is just going to show you how to where to select your language and to set the proofing language. Um, we should be able to provide this to people after the class, so you can have this as a guideline for you. Tables. Now, everyone seems to love tables, and because it makes everything look pretty. However, excuse me, tables really should only be used for tabular data, just for numeric information, numbers, totals, things like that. Not to, like, we get a lot of agendas and they're put in a table. It's really not the way a table should be used. Tables shouldn't be used to make things pretty. So, if possible, please try to keep in mind that tables are for data, numeric data. Always use the table tool, and please try to construct simple tables where you have one column on the top, one row on the side, without sub headings or nested headings and make them very complicated. One, it's very confusing for someone who might have a learning or cognitive challenges. And two, for someone who's listening to or needing guidance with assisted technology, it makes it very complicated. And a lot of times those complicated tables are impossible to fully remediate. Avoid using empty cells, blank rows, and columns. And if you want to have spacing in your cells, instead of entering a blank column to enter that padding, learn how to center your data in the cell and make your cells larger. Put your data in the middle of the cell. There's ways that you can work around and avoid putting those blank cells and rows just to make it look pretty. And then never merge cells. Redesign your table if you need to have those cells merged. Don't create your tables manually using spaces or the tab key. And use the table, or never use the table to arrange content on a page. For example, agendas. And more about tables. So this is going to show you how to create your table. This would be typically in Word or PowerPoint, excuse me. So this is just going to cover how to create it. You want to span your header rows, enter your table properties. Again, this will be provided at the end of the class so you can have it for your records. And now for links, you want to use meaningful text. So click here isn't really meaningful. For example, never use generic link text for read more without a screen tip. So you'll want to, say regional parks design map, or, regional parks map layout, or always say what that link is. Don't remove the underline from the link because that's confusing, and then never change the underline text to make it look like it's not a link, because it really does key someone in who might have visual challenges or they have mobility challenges. They're using a keyboard and they're tabbing through looking for that link. If it's not clear to them, it's just very confusing. So it's best just to leave it with blue, leave it underlined. And then there is just a detail on how to insert your hyperlink. This is just going to cover kind of how to create your hyperlink. I'll just kind of leave it at that. And now for lists, You always want to create your list using the correct tools. You'll never want to create the list manually by typing in the number or dot, spaces, or a tab. You'll want to use the tool from the home selection on the ribbon. And then you can select your indents or your outdents or your bullets or your numbers. I think the next page, I think, will show those. Oh no, later on in Word, it will go more in detail with lists and whatnot. There you go.
All right, thanks, Diana, for those best practices. So we're going to delve a little deeper into Microsoft Word now. And so when you're in Word, you want to design with a purpose. So you never want to use boxes using table structure to align content. And you never want to use borders to create separation between content. We want to avoid words in images. And we do want to design content to flow gracefully from left to right, top to bottom. If you do need a visual separator, use the horizontal line as opposed to underscore, underscore, underscore across the page. And then you want to describe image content in adjacent text whenever possible. Headings and structure. Do not manually style headings. Instead, sorry about that. Let me go back. This. Oh. My finger is getting trigger happy here. Okay, so do not manually style headings. Instead, we're going to modify the heading styles that are in Styles in Microsoft Word. We want to make sure that we don't skip heading levels. So if that does happen, Acrobat will give you an error when you're remediating the document as a PDF. Text that describes the subsequent section of content must be a heading, and text marked as a heading must describe the subsequent section of content. So here's some examples of proper structure. On the left, you have your heading 1 or H1, and then heading 2, heading 3, and then back up to heading 2 again. So on the right, we have an example of a skipped heading where you start with a heading 1, go to a heading 2, skip to a 4, and then back to a 2. So you want to make sure that your structure is consistent and in a proper order. So working with headings, you're going to select the Home tab from the ribbon. And this is where it's important that we use styles. So in your document, you're going to select the text to convert to a heading. And in the ribbon itself, you are going to choose a heading 1 for your first heading. Then you're going to click on the appropriate heading level in the Styles gallery. And then in the bottom right, you have a little arrow in your ribbon in Microsoft Word, and that will open that up and you'll see more styles. So starting with styles and using styles in Microsoft Office products, those headings and that structure that you create in the original document are retained when you convert them to a PDF. So it makes remediation so much easier. I cannot stress that enough, how much easier it makes it. Okay, so modifying styles. Whenever you want to modify a style, you want to modify the normal style first. So you're going to type a paragraph, not assign a style, and that default style will be normal. If you want to change the style, in the Styles menu on the Home tab, you're going to right-click on the normal style and select Modify. And this allows you to give it a name. You always want to base your style on normal and style for following paragraph as normal. And that allows you the space above, below, and the line spacing that can be modified by clicking the Format button and selecting Paragraph. And then you're going to click OK to save. So you can type something and assign a heading style to it. Repeat the steps above and allow this style and the following to be based on normal. List styles in Word. So to change a bulleted list to a numbered list, again, we're going to use the list styles in the ribbon in Microsoft Word, and we're going to highlight the list and click the numbered list if we're changing it from a bulleted list to a numbered list. To change the basic style of a numbered list, you're going to highlight the list, open the center list style in your ribbon, and select Style. And then there's more complex styles are available to the rightmost list style button. So there's an image on the right that kind of details that for you. A tip is to create a paragraph under a list item with no bullet or number. So this allows you to do that by typing something in the list item below first. So at the bottom of your list, then you're going to place your cursor to the left of the list item that you want to remove the A key once. And then you're going to hit your backspace key once, and that will get rid of the bullet or the number. Styles, templates, and themes. So what styles do is they govern the structure, the font size and the color, the spacing around the content, the indents, the borders, the text effects. What templates do is they include the layout, they include some content, for example, in an agenda, and it uses a theme. So if you have a document, we're going to say a board agenda item, as an example, and you create the styles in that document, and so that you don't want to have to recreate those every time you do an agenda, you create a template, and that's the .docx. Wait, is it DOC? DOCX, yes. And that will give you a template that you can save and apply to all of your agendas, and it will keep those styles in that document so you don't have to recreate them every time. So creating a template. So we just kind of went over this in the Save As type dropdown, select Word template, and it's DOTX. Then you're going to style it using the proper structure, store it in a central location for all to use. On the screen, we have some tips for creating templates. You can create your headings 1 through 6 on your new template. Add some paragraphs, and you can walk through these steps when you have Microsoft Word open after the training. We always want to verify with the accessibility checker when we're done with our documents. And the accessibility checker will present any errors, warnings, and tips for making repairs. This is a great newer feature in Office 365, where in the Review tab is one way to access this accessibility panel. At the left box, at the bottom where it says there's a little checkbox, you want to check that so that it keeps the accessibility checker running while you're working. And you're going to want to do that in each of your Office products. At the bottom of the page, when you're done with your document, there's also this little accessibility icon with a check, and it says accessibility good to go. So that is definitely a good start in making sure you're on the right track when it comes to accessibility. Now, 365, the Office products, they can't check everything. Manual review is still going to be required. And if you're creating fillable forms that are present, you're going to need further verification using keyboard testing and listening to a screen reader to ensure the accessibility is good to go. An important part of setting the document up is to make sure that you add the document properties in Word. So this is to prepare for the PDF creation, and you're going to click on the File tab, stay on the Info page, and click the down arrow to Properties. There's a little screenshot at the bottom. You're going to enter author, title, and subject. So you're going to enter your title, your subject, and the author is always going to be the County of Sonoma, the name of your department, and a general phone number, for someone from the public to call should they have any issues with the document. When you're done with your document, you're going to be creating a PDF. So you never want to print to PDF. You always want to use Create PDF from the Acrobat tab on the ribbon. And you're always going to want to use the default preferences as well. And that's everything for Microsoft Word, and Diana's going to continue with Microsoft PowerPoint.
Yay, PowerPoint. I did think I saw a hand raised. Before I go to PowerPoint, I wasn't sure what the question was. Bernadette, did you have a comment or question?
That was an accident. Sorry about that.
Okay, no worries. And I do I noticed that there was a message from Danielle, stating that it would be helpful to have more demonstration. Unfortunately, because this is only an hour class, we're kind of squished for time. So, but if you want some more, like a more demo display of individual techniques, we do have open hours every other Friday, and we're happy to assist with more one-on-one training as needed. So with that being said, on to PowerPoint.
Just one more thing with regard to that. We're also going to be offering some more in-depth classes where we do have the application open, where we're going to dedicate an hour to Microsoft Word, an hour to PowerPoint, an hour to Excel. So we will be incorporating those classes into higher ed as well in the next couple weeks.
You guys are going to get trained up so hard. It's going to be all the training all the time. Okay. 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 So, I think that I mean, most of you who are doing PowerPoint, probably this is pretty standard information, but this is just how to create a slide. On the Home tab, you're going to select New Slide, select your pre-existing slide layout, and then add your slide content, and then make sure you don't delete or rearrange the default slide elements. Your reading order. This is something that you may not keep in mind as you're designing, but this really is helpful later on down the line when you complete all of your huge your huge PowerPoint presentation. Maybe you have 60 pages. If you do this per page, you're not going to have nearly the headache as trying to clean things up afterwards. So here you're gonna go to select review, check accessibility, go to the reading order pane, and then in that reading order pane, you can select your objects, and then by pressing the control and clicking, you can select the items you want to have in the group, and then to group them, press Control G, and then to add alt text to the group, double click on the group name, type in a description for the group and press enter. And then this is covering, again, entering your alt text. I don't know if we'll have time to talk more in depth about alt text because that's kind of a large topic, but we definitely are going to have an hour-long class just on alt text because it is important. But to add your alt text, you'll right-click on your chart, picture, or other visual objects, and then edit alt text. And then this alt text screen comes up, and you'll put in your dialogue that you want to have associated with the image, your picture. And it's also helpful if you have adjacent text. You may not need to have as much alt text in the actual item, because alt text gets a little tricky. But if you have your adjacent text, it's much easier. So keep that in mind as a design element. And then, excuse me, this is how to group your layered images. And so you want to make sure that the screen readers can make sense of layered images. And a lot of times, these layered images are really just for pretty visual graphics. So keep in mind that you may not, if it doesn't matter too much to your presentation, it's just pretty graphics, you may not need to provide alternate text to those items, but here's how you would group them. So you would, to select the images, you'll press and hold Shift, and then click on each image, and then select Format, Group, and group them. And then you'll want to add your alt text as needed to your grouped image. And then when you're finished with your presentation, you'll want to run that through the accessibility checker. This is going to show you your errors that you might have. Typically, I've noticed that alt text is going to be your big piece, and the reading order will be your other big piece. And you're going to need to check those things manually a lot of times. Even if you don't see really a problem, check it manually, because the AI is never going to be as good as a human eye, at least not now with these tools. And then again, just like in Word and also in PDF, you want to put your document properties in PowerPoint. And when you do this, it's going to transfer over to the PDF when you convert it. So you're going to have your properties. Then you want to enter the author. Your author is not going to be your author name, but will be the County of Sonoma, your department, and then the phone number of someone within the department that outside resources can reach, or a resource that outside customers, readers can reach out to for help. And then your title and subject, which is typically going to be the name of your document. And maybe, like if it's an agenda, your department or your board, the date, and if it's an agenda packet, things like that. And then same as with Word, this is you always going to want to go to the Acrobat tab on the ribbon and select Create PDF and keep your preferences the default preferences. And hopefully, if you've done these steps, after it's created into a PDF, you won't have too much work to do because the alt text should carry right over to that PDF. And your reading order should be fairly good. And I also want to mention that if you're providing a PowerPoint to the board, but you want to have a PDF up on the a website or on, I'm going to call it Ingenuix, but on the board's download software. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on what that tool is called. Anyway, Legistar, sorry. Then you don't have to necessarily remediate the PowerPoint versus the PDF. One of those versions, as long as they're exactly the same, needs to be remediated and provided to the public, but both of them are not necessarily required to be remediated. So if you find it easier to remediate the PowerPoint, just remediate the PowerPoint, but make it available to the public. And then you can have a PowerPoint, or excuse me, then you can have your PDF separate, or vice versa. Just one of them has to be ADA compliant, and then try to say which one provide that information. Okay. Now, Microsoft Excel.
Microsoft Excel. All right. Gonna keep my finger off the mouse this time until we actually need to change slides. So we're going to talk about structure and design in Microsoft Excel. As Diana mentioned earlier, tables should only be used for tabular data. So to use a table, there must be column headers, row headers, or both. And if you can't conjure headings from the content, it shouldn't be a table. You always want to define your tables separately and try to construct simple tables. And you want to avoid empty cells and blank rows and columns. And then again, we never want to merge or split cells. It's better to redesign your table instead. So creating visual space around text is really important when you're looking at Excel data. We want to make the text as easy to read as possible. And so creating space around the text helps with doing that. So in the upper left, there's one table where it's a little bit scrunched together, and the same information below table where it provides some spacing, some larger fonts, is going to be easier for the public to read. So in order to increase the column width and height, to create this better legibility, you're going to select the column width, row height from the Home tab, and then you're going to go to Cells, and then you're going to go to Format, and then you're going to choose either the column width or the row height. Defining the table and headings. So after you create your table in Excel, you're going to select the cell range, including headers, and you're going to say, or click Insert Table. You want to confirm the cell range and select the box that says My Table has headers. in the Table Design tab, you're going to select the appropriate table style options, and you're going to select the table styles. So depending on the table style options chosen, there's going to be bold text will be applied to a column and row headers automatically. So table styles will vary. For example, also whether you choose first column, banded rows, etc. Again, verifying with the accessibility checker. This is the same thing as in Word and PowerPoint. You want to make sure that you check this box where it says keep accessibility checker running while I work. And at the bottom of your sheet, when it says accessibility good to go, again, even with that, manual review is still required. But it is a good starting point. And then document properties in Excel, again, you're going to put your title, your subject, the author, to ensure that we're able to reach someone if they have an issue with a document. So you're going to do this in the File tab. You're going to stay on the info page, click the down arrow next to the properties, and then that's where you're going to enter the author, title, and subject. And this again, creating a PDF, never print to a PDF. Always create from the Acrobat tab, and then use the default preferences. And that is Microsoft Excel very quickly. And it looks like we have some time left. Diana, what do you think? Should we go into accessibility tools?
It looks like we have a raised hand too, Danielle.
Okay.
Yeah, let's field some questions.
Let's do some questions. Oh, I think you're on mute.
I think we unmute you on our end.
Oh, okay.
There we go. Is that working?
Yes.
There you go.
A lot of times I will notice that it's really easy for folks to take a snip of their work in Excel. And so what they'll do is they'll kind of take a snip, copy and paste that into a Word document or a PowerPoint. And I just wanted to kind of flag that poses a concern whenever I'm remediating then, because it turns out as a picture. So I was going to see if you guys could address how is a better way for people to take information in an Excel sheet and then put it into a Microsoft or a Word document.
Okay. So in Excel, you're going to want to highlight the table and copy it and then paste it into the Word document. We want to avoid screen grabs at all costs, whether they're tables, graphs. Sometimes people will screen grab some text from a different report. And all of those things make it very difficult to remediate when that happens. So the best way to accomplish this is to really copy the text, copy the Excel table, or reimagine the information in a way that's accessible, whether it's putting information from a graph into a table next to it that provides that information in an alternate format. That's one way to accomplish that. Does that answer your question?
There's something you need.
Yes, thank you.
All right. And Bernadette, you have your hand
Hi.
up?
Yeah, I
Hello?
have a question about the tables as well. And in that, I think it was the design table tools menu where you would select, I don't remember what the options are, but can we go back to that? Because that always trips me up when I'm trying to select, I think it's like first column, first row.
Okay. Oh, here.
Yeah.
So what is your question?
So my question, I guess, is so header row, first column, are those pretty much the standard ones for most tables of these basic tables that we're talking about today that would need to be selected?
Basically selecting the header row, of course, is going to put the headers at the top of your table. The first column, if you have headers for the rows as well, those are going to be the headers in that first column.
Okay, so
Sometimes tables only have column headers. It's called header row because it goes across, but the headers are actually for the columns below them.
got it. Okay, that's the confusing part. Thank you.
Yes, definitely.
I want to jump in regards to Google Drive, to Google Docs. Google Docs does have a heading structure set into the Google Docs, so you can use Google Docs, but I don't know what kind of flexibility it has to, make your heading 1s, heading 2s, heading 3s, look really nice. I haven't really used it that much. I kind of just use it for quick notes, where I don't really have a lot of headings, and I just kind of use it for personal use. I don't know how accessible those documents really are, because we typically work with, Microsoft and then Adobe Acrobat. My guidance would be just make sure you're keeping your heading structures, and then everything applies as far as tables go. If you're making tables to create your structure, that's not going to be really great for assistive technology at all. So I'm not really sure I'd have to kind of see what that product looks like to see how compliant it really is. My thought is that it's probably really not. You could make it more compliant, but it's going to have to be pretty basic, I think. But I'm happy to have a look over it to see. Kind of a case-by-case thing. Because I don't know, I have not tried to take one of those documents and then make it a PDF. So I'm not sure what where is that final product going to after it's used in the shared drive?
Right. That's definitely something that we can look at and evaluate and get back to you on. Do we have any other questions? No?
Any requests for other trainings? Could do that, Everyone's like, no, we just want out of here. It's fun, trust me.
Will you please send out?
Yeah.
Yes, we will send out the PowerPoint slides. And we will have more trainings.
Yeah, for sure, an alt text, a color contrast, and then focus trainings on each of the Office tools, the 3, and I even think we should do one with the vendor contract.
Contracting.
Yeah.
So a lot of departments have contractors who provide reports for the county, and then those are sent to ISD to remediate. And it's important to know at the when you're putting together the contract itself, there is language at the back of the professional services agreement, that green text at the back, that's optional. There's, I think it's paragraph 9 and 10 are information that you can add to your contract that says basically if the vendor provides any documentation that it will be remediated. So that is a huge, sometimes reports are hundreds, if not thousands of pages sometimes. And having that at the onset of your contracting can save yourself and the county in general time and money. So that's definitely something that we can go over in a training as well. Yes, details about the Every Other Friday open office to help on a specific problem. So every other Friday, and these open office hours are included in higher ed, so you can go in and sign up for those. So basically, we have 3 of our web support specialists, myself, Diana, and Carly. We will take your specific documents that you're having issues with or questions on and help you through that process of working through the remediation challenges. And so we have a link to those to all the classes, including the open office hours at the end of this presentation. So you guys can go in there and sign up, and we will see you every other Friday. Thank you.
Thanks, and we'll send out the recording as well.
Yes, we will definitely send out the recording as well. Well, we want to thank you. Oh, I'm getting an echo. Okay, thanks, Carly. Anyway, we want to thank all of you for joining us today, and look forward to seeing you at future trainings. And again, go in and sign up for those open office hours, and we can help you on your specific documents. So thanks again, and have a great rest of your day.
Take it easy, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.